every single day, try to serve, try to add value, try to do something for other people. And what that really requires is every single day, the first person you have to manage is yourself. The second person you have to manage every day is your boss. The third person is anyone who's relying on you, who considers you the boss. And then think, what can you do? What value do you have to add today that meets up with the needs of one of your cross-functional partners, or one of your customers, or with your boss, or with your direct reports? What are you bringing to the table today? And practice being the person you're trying to become.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. I'm your host Neha Murthy, and let's begin with a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year, and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, we have with us today Bruce Tulgan. Bruce Tulgan is internationally recognized as a leading expert on the best practices of effective management, generational change, and young people in the workplace. He is a best-selling author and advisor to business leaders all over the world, and a sought-after keynote speaker and management trainer. Since 1995, Bruce has worked with tens of thousands of leaders and managers in hundreds of well-known organizations, including American Express, ESPN, Mercedes-Benz, and many more. Bruce lectures at the Yale Graduate School of Management and other academic institutions, and his writing has appeared in dozens of magazines and newspapers, including the Harvard Business Review, the New York Times, USA Today, etc. We are extremely happy and honored to have someone of his stature on our interview series today. Welcome, Bruce. We are thrilled to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be with you.
It's absolutely a pleasure, Bruce. So, hopping right into the questions, Bruce, please tell us about Rainmaker thinking that has been running successfully for a great 27 years.
Yes, since 1993, we've been doing research on the front lines of the workplace. What we do is we do in-depth interviews and focus groups, and everything we do is based on that interview research. Our interview is a little bit different from most, because we don't just ask multiple choice questions, we ask open-ended questions. We ask people, why do you go work one place as opposed to another? Why do you leave? What's at stake for you in your working life and career? Tell us about your best boss. Tell us about your bosses who were not so good. What would make you work harder? What gets in your way? What would make you leave? And we keep talking with people as long as they're willing to keep talking to us. So I try to keep these interviews going. I try to stay in touch with people over time. And more than 500,000 people have participated in our research from more than 400 organizations over the last 27 years. Based on all the insights we're able to gather, we've produced 21 books and a lot of white papers and articles, and we provide consulting services to organizations, and we do a lot of leadership training.
Wow, that's interesting.
You know what? It beats working.
Yes, definitely. Also, Bruce, you've written numerous best-selling books and also given lectures at very prestigious colleges on management. Could you share some concepts from those memorable lectures?
Well, there are 3 longitudinal studies that we've been running. One is the great generational shift in the workforce. And so there, what we've been tracking is the growing age bubble on one end of the spectrum in the workforce, and the growing youth bubble on the other end of the spectrum in the workforce. And we've been looking at what we call the rising global youth bubble. So in North America and Western Europe and much of Eastern Europe and in Japan, the workforce is aging, but on the other end of the spectrum, there's a growing youth bubble. And of course, in Latin America, the workforce is younger. In East Asia, it's younger still. In South Asia, it's younger still. And in Africa, it is youngest. So one of the things we've been trying to help business leaders understand the implications of this great generational shift, not just in numbers, but in norms and values. So one of the things that we're focused on is the changing mindset of the workforce from sort of long-term and hierarchical to short-term and transactional. It used to be that people would hitch their wagon to the star of an established organization, pay their dues, climb the ladder, do as they're told, wait for their boss to notice them. In the long run, they'd wait for the system to take care of them. But more and more workers of all ages, not just second wave millennials and Generation Z, but workers of all ages, they show up and they think, well, you know, what do you want from me today, tomorrow, this week, this month, this year, next year, maybe? And what do you have to offer me today, tomorrow, this week, this month, this year, maybe next week, or maybe next year? And you know, the workplace and the world has become so much more uncertain that people are much more focused on short-term transactional dynamics. So that's one set of issues. We've also looked at, you know, what's happening on the oldest end of the spectrum when it comes to knowledge transfer and flexible retention and succession planning. On the youngest end of the spectrum, it's attraction, selection, onboarding, up-to-speed training, performance management, rewards, incentives. And on the youngest end of the spectrum, there's a different retention issue. We call it the development investment paradox. You bring in new young people, you train them up to speed. No sooner do you have them trained up to speed than you have to start worrying if they're going to go out into the free market and sell your training and development investment to the highest bidder. So it's very frustrating. So we spend a lot of time helping our clients understand how to improve 0 to 2 year retention, 2 to 5 year retention. And again, not just among the youngest, least experienced people, but they're the bleeding edge of these changes. So that's one whole set of issues. The second set of issues we help leaders understand is based on our second longitudinal study, which is on human capital management best practices. And it's what are the implications for staffing, strategy, and for training and development and for performance management of this new short-term transactional dynamic, more uncertain staffing needs, and more fluid staffing realities. Sometimes you have to staff up, sometimes you have to staff down, and helping organizations understand what that means for them in terms of their long-term core group and their large fluid talent pool, what it means for them in terms of reward strategy, what it means for them in terms of their ability to win the talent wars in competition with other employers, build a winning culture so that people want to go work for them and want to work harder and want to stay longer. And then so that's the second big area of our focus. And then the third big area is leadership and management relationships. What works and what doesn't. What do people want and need from their leaders, managers, and supervisors? What are the most common pitfalls organizations face when it comes to building a culture of leadership? Individual managers, leaders, what's hard about managing people? One of the questions we ask managers every single day is, what's the hardest thing for you about managing people? And of course they say, I don't have time. And HR gets in the way. And maybe I'm not a natural leader. And I don't want conflict. And I don't want people to think I'm a jerk. And I try to be fair, but everybody's different. And how do I really empower people? So one of the things that we've helped leaders and managers try to understand is what goes wrong in management relationships and what are the concrete tactics managers need to commit to help people do more work better and faster. So that's the third area of our focus. That's the focus of my book, It's Okay to Be the Boss, my book, The 27 Challenges Managers Face, and my book, Fast Feedback. And my newest book is The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. And that's all about practicing being the person you're trying to become.
Right, I completely agree to that. As you know, like you need to completely understand the employee's mindset. And as you said, I had given a complete gist about your book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. And you know, it's so important to know what the employee is going through and making him feel that you are essential to the company. That gives a rise to his motivation to work towards the job as well.
Yeah, I mean, so the question is, what makes somebody indispensable? And one of the things that we realized was, you know, if you're really trying to be indispensable, probably the biggest risk you have is trying to say yes to everyone and everything because you want to be indispensable. But then you become overcommitted. And if you become overcommitted, you put yourself in a position where it's very hard to be reliable, much less indispensable. So that was the riddle I was trying to solve in that book, is how do you make yourself indispensable without succumbing to overcommitment syndrome? Yeah, I mean, again, I wish I made all this stuff up, but it comes from decades of research.
Definitely. And also, narrowing down a bit, now we see a lot of Gen Zs, baby boomers, and millennials working together. So, you know, among the other things you had experience in generational too, right? Change too, right? So, are there different approach to work, or how do you say generations differ in terms of approach towards their work, and how do you, as a management consultant, resolve those differences?
Yeah, so look, looking through a generational diversity lens is looking through, and it's like looking through any diversity lens, right? So you try to understand where people are coming from and where they're going. You try to respect differences and appreciate differences and leverage differences. Generational difference is a little bit different, right? Because people will say, well, how much of this is just about being young, right? Everyone starts out young and gets old, right? God willing. And that's about half the story, right? What life stage, what career stage are you at? The other half of the story is what makes generational difference different from age difference. And that is the accidents of history that shape each generation. So, you know, we're living through this pandemic right now. That's a good example of an accident of history. So if you're 5 years old or 15 or 25 or 35 or 60 right now, we're all living through this together, but it's going to shape you in a very different way, right? Some people, they may be the last kids to go to school uninterrupted without having to learn from home, or, you know, before we realized, hey, maybe learning from home is better. Same with work from home. There will be some people who have never gone to work before this remote work revolution. And so their whole experience of starting their careers will be different. That's very formative. So that's the nature of generational difference. But, you know, like any diversity lens, you have to be careful too much about generalizing. So, you know, there are as many stories within each generation as there are people. But there are these broad trends in attitude and behavior. So there are macro forces, institutions in a state of constant flux, individuals realizing they have to fend for themselves, the information tidal wave growing and growing and growing, the pace of change accelerating. So these big macro forces driven by globalization and technology, they're driving history. And then on a micro level, things change, right? So parenting norms, teaching norms, day-to-day realities. Today's generation grew up learning how to think, learn, and communicate with a handheld supercomputer in their hands. So we're all living through these changes together. The shift in norms and values is really one that people of all ages are manifesting. It's just that the youngest, least experienced people, they're like canaries in the coal mine, right? They've never known it any other way. They're shaped by these forces. Many of them like it better than the old-fashioned way. So when we keep our finger on the pulse of the new young workforce, we can see where things are going. And we can see where we're all headed. And every so often in history, the young people don't grow up and settle down. What happens instead is the older, more experienced people get more and more like the young people. And this seems to be one of those times. So what we're seeing is we've been tracking this generational shift for 27 years now. When I started tracking it, I was young. And so, I was 27 when I started tracking it. So, now Generation Xers are the prime age workforce. Baby boomers are the aging workforce. Millennials are no longer even the young people in the workplace anymore. There's post-millennials. So look, what I tell business leaders is you don't need a cheat sheet for each generation. That would be silly. That would be like having a cheat sheet for, women of Norwegian descent from Seattle. Like, well, what you need is a cheat sheet for every single person. And the real lesson of looking through any diversity lens is one size fits all no longer works. Everybody's different. More and more, we're moving toward an environment where there's uncertainty, where people are thinking short-term and transactional, where people need more structured guidance, direction, support, and coaching from their leaders, where people want more flexibility, where people expect more customization, where the only way really to attract the best people, drive performance, and retain the best people is to really engage with them and set them up for success, help them get more work done better and faster, and help them earn more of what they really need and want. And so, maybe we're all millennials now.
Right. I couldn't agree to you more. Like, you cannot just have a cheat sheet for a specific generation as such, because each person goes through a different kind of experience and that molds him to his different thinking, right? Like,
yeah, and so what's useful about looking through the generational lens is the same as looking through any diversity lens, that it helps you appreciate where people are coming from, where they're going, appreciate and respect their differences, and then realize one size fits all doesn't work, and really it's one person at a time, one day at a time.
right. Absolutely. And what are some of the key principles of management and leadership that you personally live by?
Well, so don't make the mistake of practicing false empowerment. Empowerment really matters. False empowerment is sink or swim, reinvent the wheel, figure it out, do it however you think it should be done, even if it's not up to you. Real empowerment requires a leadership where you're engaged, making broad performance standards clear, spelling out expectations, making resources available, helping people track their performance, giving them course correcting feedback, troubleshooting, problem solving, holding people accountable, and rewarding them extra when they go the extra mile. That's real empowerment, setting people up for success, holding them to a high standard and helping them meet it. So don't fall for false empowerment thinking. Also don't fall for false fairness thinking. Yes, you should be fair, but it's not fair to treat everybody exactly the same. Everybody's different. So what's fair is to help everybody succeed, and then make it clear for people what they need to do to earn more, and try to do more for people when they go the extra mile, and try to treat everybody as a special case as much as you can. So that's real fairness. Don't fall for the myth of the jerk boss, that somehow if you're a strong leader, people will think you're a jerk. Usually if you're a weak leader is when people think you're a jerk. If you don't keep track of what's going on, so you make bad decisions, if you don't make expectations clear, if you don't solve problems while they're still small, if you don't know how to talk with people in a productive way about the work, if you wait until you're angry or things are going wrong to really manage, then they'll think you're a jerk, right? So what most people want is guidance, direction, support, and coaching. And you can build really important and strong rapport with people by talking about the work, and that's what makes the work go better. And relationships at work, really, they go better when the work goes better. Don't worry about difficult confrontations. have a lot more ordinary conversations, and you're likely to avoid those difficult conversations. Don't blame HR. Learn the rules and follow the rules. You don't need to be a natural leader. You need to practice the basics. It's like being a teacher or a coach. Make expectations clear, track performance, help people meet their resource needs, troubleshoot, problem solve, and reward people. And don't think you don't have enough time to provide guidance, direction, support, and coaching. If you don't spend the time up front, you'll spend more time solving unnecessary problems, getting problems under control after they've gotten out of control, salvaging resources, realizing people have been going in the wrong direction, dealing with low performers, losing high performers. If you manage upfront in advance every step of the way in a structured coaching style, then you're much better able to delegate and drive performance through other people.
Absolutely. I completely agree to that point that, you can't just set a goal and ask everyone to work towards it. We need to understand each and every person's strength and weakness and align their personal goals. And, when they start feeling that importance, they'll automatically work towards it. And it's going to be a success that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever had a boss who doesn't keep track of who you are and what you're doing, that makes you feel like you're not important and your work's not important. If you have a boss who knows who you are and knows what you're doing and really cares, that makes it clear that you're important and your work is important.
Absolutely. So before wrapping up the interview, Bruce, lastly, any passing remarks that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I guess the thing I'm trying to say to people is every single day, try to serve, try to add value, try to do something for other people. And what that really requires is every single day, the first person you have to manage is yourself. The second person you have to manage every day is your boss. The third person is anyone who's relying on you, who considers you the boss. And then think, what can you do? What value do you have to add today that meets up with the needs of one of your cross-functional partners or one of your customers or with your boss or with your direct reports? What are you bringing to the table today? And practice being the person you're trying to become.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that positivity towards the end.
Well, thank you so much for including me.
It was lovely talking to you, Bruce. It was a personal learning experience for me, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for our audience as well.
Well, thank you so much. It's a privilege for me to get a chance to spend this time with you.